Hi there, it's Luna Michaels, Esoteric Astrologer, and today I want to talk to you about esoteric transits from Mars. And included in this, I definitely want to talk about Mars transiting your own planets, but also even some outer planets transiting your own Mars, as well as maybe we'll get into retrograde Mars stuff. Okay, so first of all, in mundane astrology, we think of Mars definitely, anger, your energy level, your physical capability. It can be your desires, your drive to work, to accomplish things. All that's Mars. Some people tend to think of it kind of negatively in the sense of anger and frustrations or selfishness or something. And Mars can be that, but also on the more higher level of Mars, or even a higher level of mundane astrology, but also definitely when you're moving into the esoteric astrology, that Mars is the pioneer. It's the one that's adventuresome. It's courageous. So it's the part of you that if you are on a spiritual path, that you've got the fortitude, you've got the courage, you've got the will to take the next step, to move into the unknown, to release things that are worn out, and we'll get into that about Mars. And it's also, in a lot of ways, Mars, always referring to Esoteric Astrology by Alice Bailey. Confusing, hard to read, but there's some quotes I have from her in here of what I want to talk to you about. But, Mars is also about the pairs of opposites. Happy and sad, healthy and sick, lonely and feeling bonded, or whatever you've got, those opposites. That Mars kind of represents the tension between the opposites, and that movement where you go back and forth between the opposites can be Mars. And that can be the aggression about that, just trying to balance things out, and also the quest, the undying quest to try to create that balance, or at least hopefully move above the opposites into a more spiritual dimension that isn't doing all that. Okay, sorry, my computer just did something. So Mars is about that opposites, so it also is that sense of wanting to overcome the opposites. And so it kind of contains both of those. Before we discovered Pluto, Mars was the ruler of Aries and Scorpio, and we still call Mars the co-ruler of Scorpio. But in a lot of ways, Mars is Pluto's little brother, so it is a bit more immediate in its needs, where Pluto more plans the way to overcome things. Mars can be a little more frustrated and wanting an instant gratification. So that's one of the challenges with Mars, to have that sense of go for it, go over the problem, but seeking higher wisdom from other parts of yourself. Because sometimes Mars doesn't have the wisdom, it just has the oomph that can come off sort of random behaviors or something, even in the best case scenario. But in the esoteric astrology, we have Aries being the mundane ruler, yes, and then Scorpio is ruled by Mars when we go to the higher turn there. So we get back into that idea of of Aries and Scorpio. And so in the esoteric astrology, Mars is more about, if there is a warlike quality, to overcome the lower self. Because sometimes when you have basic Mars stuff, it's like, I want what I want, and it's Aries, and that's great. I'm going to get the job and get the relationship and whatever, lose weight or whatever mission you're on, But when we're talking about that higher turn of Mars, it's how do I win the higher goal, and how do I defeat, like there is that sense of conquering with Mars. I beat that other guy to get with that girl, or I did better than I usually do in track, and I got a higher, I got a faster score, whatever. So there's that sense of defeating something when you're winning it in Aries. But when it's in Scorpio, it's more about yourself and overcoming the lower parts and evolving. And I think you do have to watch when you're having Mars transits, or transits to your Mars, and you're on a spiritual path, that you're not being so hard with yourself. Because there can be a sense of, putting yourself down, or, because that previous step you were on was valid for that period of time, and then you just this maybe sounds a little complicated, but you develop a part of your personality that's going to do that step. And so you build it and you construct it and you maintain it, and before you go to the higher step, you destroy that personality that wanted that thing, and you start to build a new personality aspect, hopefully moving closer and closer to soul purpose, that wants to go on to this higher level. Whether that could be, I want to go for this job, and now I've done the karma with this job, and now I want to go up to here. Well, I have to create a different self that wants that higher goal. So you have to destroy the lower self to move into that higher piece of self. And Mars represents that destroyer aspect of spiritual energy. You know, it's the creator, the sustainer, the destroyer. And the way we destroy, you know, can be a gentle letting go. It can be a gratefulness that, wow, that part of personality got me to this job. Instead of like, well, what a schmuck it was to do that. It's like, well, you don't need that to catapult to the next level. And so watching that when you're having Mars transits, and again, Mars transits generally going to be very quick, you know, because Mars moves so fast. But unless you're having a retrograde Mars, where it's working with the planet and going forward, stopping, coming back, hitting you again, you know, as it retrogrades, and then going forward, you get like that back and forth, you're going to have a Mars transit 3 times over, you know, 6 or 8 months when Mars is retrograde. But when you're having a transit to Mars, I mean, if it's from Pluto, it could last 2.5 years. You know, if it's from Saturn, it could last the better part of a year. So watching those angles, even if you know about progressions, if you're having something to a progressed, you know, a progressed planet to your Mars, or your progressed Mars doing something, you want to really be also honoring where you've been as you are moving to that next piece, instead of thinking, oh, what a dummy I was to do that. And so that's just something to know, that you can move ahead spiritually and not be cruel to your old self that you're releasing, you know, even if it was flawed and it's going to be let go of. You can still have some compassion. Hey, it got me to where I was. Now here's something interesting too about the esoteric part of Mars. I may have talked to you sometimes about the rays, and you would find out about the 7 rays if you're doing any Alice Bailey studying. There's really, you know, there's the 3 main rays of 1, 2, and 3. 1 being will, 2 being love, 3 being intellect or knowledge. But there are the 4 other rays, 5, 6, 7, 8, 4, 5, 6, 7. Count. Okay. And Mars is on the 6th ray, which is the ray of devotion, and it kind of is a sub-ray of the 2nd ray of the heart, but there's a tension with the 6th ray. It is a ferocity that can come with it, and that devotional component can be fanatical. So there's that part of Mars too to watch out for when you're having those transits, because again, it's part of how you're being motivated into that next spiritual step, but watching out for being, you know, too over the top about your goal, or drowning in other people's visions of things. You know, sometimes it's part of that, again, moving into that new piece. So you get very excited about how you're viewing it, or the new spiritual thing you're into, or whatever it is, even a new relationship, and the new job. It just can be a little too, you know, off-putting, like a new convert to a religion or something, and it gets a little like, okay, you know. So you have to watch that in yourself to other people when you're having Mars. But again, that component of the 6th ray for Mars is about creating the war on that lower personality and defeating it and being more in a soul state. And hopefully with a little gentleness. I guess if they're gentle sorts of war, I mean, sometimes you go to war with yourself and pieces on the spiritual path, and you really have to really defeat it. But to maybe have that idea of a spiritual warrior that does honor the enemy that it's defeating, you know, and acknowledges the power you're taking as you kill off that enemy, you know, instead of spitting on it or something. You know, there's that kind of more gentlemanly type warrior, you know, and then remembering that when you're working on yourself. Okay, let's see, what did I underline here that's not too, okay. Yeah, fighting for the ideal. That's also Mars. And that's one of the things that can help you when you're having Mars transits, is knowing that you can stay with that concept and encourage yourself and encourage others. That's a great part of Mars too, like a cheerleader, you know, and being the one who says, you can do it. You know, interestingly, depending on where your Mars is, you know, I've got Mars in Pisces. It's my Mars sign, and I'm a great listener. You know, I'm see the beauty in art and feel moved by things like this, but I'm kind of wimpy. Like, I don't want to go on the roller coaster. You know, I can be fear-based, and so when I get challenged by Mars, I find people with, you say, weaker Mars signs, instead of feeling irritable, like some people feel irritated when they have a Mars transit, I can feel fearful. And so that's another aspect from Mars, because Mars is trying to move you into that next piece of self. Some people can feel irritated by that provoking. Some people can feel nervous or agitated. Maybe an air sign might feel more mental agitation. My little Mars in Pisces, ooh, I can get scared from Mars. And so knowing how to soothe yourself when you're having Mars transits is important. I think a lot of people with fire sign Marses, you know, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, or in fire houses, need to be physically active to work with that energy and integrate the energy. Earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, sometimes having rituals helps, or a routine, grounding yourself, and letting go of things on a physical level can be good. Clearing out a closet, you know, things like that, making room for new energy. Air, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. Definitely there can be a need for mental stillness. Sometimes talking things out is important. Journal writing can be great if you've got that Mars. And again, this can be Mars houses too when I'm talking, air houses when I'm mentioning this. And trying to work with stilling the mind. It's hard when you have Mars in an air sign. And then the Mars in water, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. Feeling comforted. I find I love the bathtub really is soothing for me, being Mars in water. It sounds kind of funny too, but drinking lots of liquid when you have Mars in water helps you sort of, I don't know, it's like calming down the fire and getting in, you know, like knowing what to do, like that sputtering of a fire being out of control, and you throw water on it, it can and walking in nature is good for Mars in water. And knowing that you're not dumbing down the Mars, but you're incorporating the energy in a way that moves you forward, you know, and helps you integrate that energy. Deep breathing is also good for Mars, well, in any sign really, but air and water. Okay, what else did I want to talk to you about here? The destroyer. Well, again, that sense, I was talking about feeling fearful, but also people can feel irritated when they're having Mars transits. Sometimes even you can get like little physical symptoms, like a sore throat, or feeling like you're going to have irritation, like, because Aries rules the head and Mars is the head, you know, kind of vague sinus symptoms, headaches. You can have kind of that and say, okay, I'm taking in this energy. What can I do with this? And what do I need to change? What do I need to let go of? What is my next step? Can help you from just, because sometimes Mars is so quick, it's just a little burst, and it could just seem like, oh, I'm having a headache, or I feel a little irritated today, or I feel a little nervous, or kind of vulnerable. But if you know you're having Mars, like, where do you want me to go? Even if it's a small step to take, you can take advantage of that. And these signals that Mars is giving you can be a prompting. And, okay, need my glasses to see my notes. Duality. Okay. Oh, right. The other thing that's Mars represents your bloodstream. Sometimes when people, especially if you're having Saturn Mars, I notice people having like anemia symptoms or fatigue symptoms, and that's where I don't know if you eat red meat, or looking at iron intake is important with Mars because it represents that hemoglobin. Again, the deep breathing or yoga, qigong, those kind of things focus on building that bloodstream, and the oxygenation is important. Sometimes when you've been having a long-term Mars situation, that can kind of feel like it's wearing you down. And again, with that sort of thing, to look at what is the next step. Are you resisting a step? Are you resisting moving forward? Are you resisting leaving a part of your life behind, or too clinging to the old self? Sometimes, you know, one part of Mars is like blah with the old self and want to jump up to the new self, but another could be that fear of going into the unknown, and I want to stay with the low, you know, this thing that's safe. And so sometimes the fatigue you get with Mars can be that you're tired of hanging on and seeing what you're hanging on to. Just a note with Mars retrograde, doesn't happen that often. A lot of people get very frustrated, especially people who have a really strong Mars sign. Like I find even Mars in Pisces, it's sort of like, whatever. I mean, I live with Mars in Pisces, so Mars retrograde isn't so bad for me, but somebody who's got Sun conjunct Mars, or someone's Mars in Aries, you know, that period of time when Mars retrogrades for those few months can be very frustrating. And I think kind of like of the Mercury retrograde, where you go within and what are my goals? What is important to me now? Doing that inner inventory kind of thing can be great to then motivate you again for the next step. And knowing maybe a lot of outer stuff isn't going to happen when Mars is retrograde, but when it goes forward, you'll be ready. Instead of being frustrated and bang your head against a wall during the retrograde, you can clear clear out what needs to be cleared out and clear that road, so when the roadblock comes off, that road is smooth and you're ready to just go on it, rather than expending a lot of energy trying to do something when you're frustrated, you know. Okay, so I think that might be all I want to talk to you about with Mars. Oh, just quickly too, I guess, when Mars does contact you, it generally lasts, you know, 2 or 3 days if it's a quick Mars transit. Sometimes it sets off early and you find the degree of your planet is here, but Mars is 2 degrees ahead of that, and you feel it already. And sometimes when it's exact, you're kind of done with it. So that's something to look at. That can even happen when a planet is approaching your own Mars. It can set off a little bit early. But knowing that Mars can be your friend, that it's encouraging and it's pushing, it's coaching, it's eager for you to grow, and it doesn't just have to cause frustration and tension, is important, or anger. You know, it's important to know that. So I want you to ask me any questions you have. My website, you know, BalloonAMichaels.com. I have some answers for you. Maybe you want to do a session if you're having a more long-term thing. And again, looking at where your Mars is in your chart, the aspects to it, the house it's in, if you're in a relationship where your Mars hits that person's, all those things are going to add more dimensions to a simple little Mars transit. So, because those themes, even though the transit is very quick, if it's directly Mars, it's going to affect you in a certain way repeatedly. So it's numerous opportunities to look at that part of you and how to grow. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you later.